My son-in-law handed me a dirty mop in front of 8 guests. My own daughter said, "You eat for free. Stop pretending you're sick and start cleaning." That night I packed and vanished, leaving just a box in my room that would turn her husband's face white when they found it. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. I used to think the worst thing that could happen to a woman my age was losing her husband. Harold died 3 years ago from a heart attack, and I thought grief would kill me. But sitting in that dining room in our Northern Virginia home, holding a filthy mop while 8 strangers stared at me with a mixture of pity and disgust, I realized there are worse things than death. There's humiliation served up by your own family. Let me backtrack to how I ended up in that moment. Because nobody starts their story with the mop. They start with hope. When Harold passed, my daughter Jennifer insisted I sell our house and move in with her and Brad. "Mom, you can't be alone," she'd said, those concerned brown eyes working overtime. "We have that big house. The guest wing is perfect for you." What she didn't mention was that I'd be paying rent, groceries, utilities, and basically funding their lifestyle while pretending to be the grateful mother-in-law. Harold had left me well provided for. His life insurance policy of $500,000 plus our savings and investments brought my total inheritance to about $1.1 million, comfortable for a 68-year-old widow, but apparently irresistible to a certain son-in-law. Brad Morrison, my son-in-law, 35 years old, works in finance, which I've learned is code for moves other people's money around and schemes off the top. Tall, handsome in that artificial way that screams expensive dental work and hair transplants. Jennifer met him at some charity gala 2 years ago and came home glowing about his success, his charm, his potential. I should have paid more attention to that word, potential. The dinner party was supposed to be important for Brad's career. Investors, he'd called them, though they looked more like the kind of people who count other people's money for a living. Jennifer had been stressed for weeks, planning every detail like she was hosting royalty. I'd offered to help with the cooking, but Brad waved me off. "We've got catering, Maggie. Just try to stay out of the way." Stay out of the way in the house I was paying for. The evening started normally enough. I dressed nicely, my good black dress, Harold's mother's pearls, and joined them for cocktails. The guests seemed pleasant, though I noticed how Brad introduced me. "This is Margaret, Jennifer's mother. She's staying with us temporarily while she adjusts." The pause before adjusts was loaded with implications I didn't like. During dinner, I'd excused myself to use the bathroom. When I came back, someone had spilled red wine on the cream carpet in the hallway. Not a huge stain, but noticeable. I was heading to the kitchen to get something to clean it when Brad appeared. "There you are," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. His smile was razor sharp. "I need you to take care of this mess." He handed me the mop. Where he'd gotten it so quickly, I'll never know. "Jennifer mentioned you used to clean houses before you married Harold." The room went silent. 8 faces turned toward me, and I saw it in their eyes. The quick recalculation of my worth, the embarrassment on my behalf, the second-hand shame they felt watching this happen. Jennifer's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Mom, you eat for free. Stop pretending you're sick and start cleaning." Pretending to be sick. She was referring to my arthritis, the reason I'd mentioned I couldn't help with the heavy preparations. The same arthritis that had me taking prescription pain medication and sometimes moving slowly in the mornings. I took the mop. What else could I do? Make a scene? Embarrass Jennifer further? So I cleaned the wine stain while 8 people watched and pretended to resume their conversations. But I heard the whispers. "How sad. Poor woman. Must be difficult living on charity." After they left, Jennifer found me in my room. "Mom, I'm sorry about the mop thing. But you have to understand Brad's under tremendous pressure. These investors could change our lives. And humiliating me in front of them helps." "How exactly? You're being dramatic." "It was just cleaning. You've cleaned before." That's when I knew. My own daughter saw me the same way Brad did, as the help. Free labor with no dignity required. That night after they went to bed, I packed my suitcases. 2 years of living with them. 2 years of paying their bills while being treated like an inconvenience. 2 years of watching my daughter transform into someone I didn't recognize. But before I left, I placed a small wooden box on the dresser in my room. The kind of box that looks innocent enough until you open it. Harold had always said I was too trusting, too naive about people's true nature. He'd been wrong about the naive part, but right about the trusting part. I called a taxi at 5 in the morning and left through the front door. I didn't sneak out like a thief. I left like a woman who'd finally remembered her worth. I wonder how long it took them to find the box. I wonder if Brad's hand shook when he opened it. Because sometimes the woman holding the mop is the most dangerous person in the room. I'd been planning my exit strategy for 18 months. Ever since I overheard Brad on the phone with someone named Marcus discussing the old lady's savings and how much longer they'd need to play nice. The box I left behind contained the first breadcrumb in a trail that would lead straight to his destruction. See, Harold might have been an accountant, but he taught me something valuable. Always keep records. Always watch the money. And always have a backup plan. The morning after I moved in with Jennifer and Brad, I'd installed a voice recording app on my phone. Not because I suspected anything initially. I just wanted to capture family moments. Maybe record Jennifer's laugh or Brad's stories about work for later. Funny how the truth has a way of recording itself. Within a month, I had accidentally captured some interesting conversations. Brad talking to his friend Marcus about bleeding the old bat dry. Jennifer laughing when Brad called me the golden goose with arthritis. Most damaging of all, a phone conversation where Brad discussed moving my savings into an investment account he controlled. For my own protection, he'd tell me. The voice recordings went into a safety deposit box I'd rented under my maiden name, along with copies of bank statements showing mysterious transfers from my accounts, credit card charges I'd never made, and a detailed log of every financial manipulation they'd attempted. The wooden box contained one thing, a key to that safety deposit box wrapped in a note with an address. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You want to know where I went? After walking out of their house at dawn, I drove straight to the Riverside Motor Lodge on the outskirts of town. The kind of place where you pay cash and nobody asks questions. I'd been planning this moment for months, slowly moving money from my main accounts to a private account Jennifer and Brad knew nothing about. Harold's life insurance had been substantial, and his investments had grown nicely. I wasn't rich, but I had options. By 8 a.m., my phone was buzzing with increasingly frantic calls. I let them go to voicemail. Mom, where are you? Your bed wasn't slept in and your suitcases are gone. Jennifer's voice, more annoyed than worried. Maggie, this is ridiculous. Come home immediately. Brad using his commanding tone that probably worked in boardrooms but had lost its effect on me. Mom, Brad's investors called this morning, wanting to discuss something about due diligence. He needs you here. Ah, there it was. They needed something from me. I ordered room service and spent the morning doing something I hadn't done in years. Planning my life around what I wanted instead of what everyone else needed. At noon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Collins, this is Detective Martinez with the Financial Crimes Unit. We received an interesting package this morning containing a safety deposit box key and some rather compelling documentation. Would you be available to come in and answer some questions? I smiled for the first time in months. I'll be right there, Detective. You see, the voice recordings were damaging, but they weren't the real weapon. The real weapon was Harold's final gift to me. A gift I hadn't understood until I'd lived with Brad and Jennifer for 6 months and started recognizing the patterns. Harold had been an accountant for 40 years. He'd also been quietly investigating his own son-in-law. 3 months before Harold died, he discovered discrepancies in Brad's investment firm. Money moving in ways that didn't quite make sense. Clients whose accounts showed gains that didn't match market performance. Harold had started documenting everything, creating a paper trail that led to one inescapable conclusion. Brad Morrison was running an elaborate Ponzi scheme. Harold never told me because he died before he could finish his investigation. But he'd left everything in a sealed envelope with our lawyer with instructions to open it only if I ever felt threatened by Brad financially. I'd opened that envelope 6 months ago. The wooden box was just the appetizer. The main course was waiting for Brad at the Financial Crimes Unit where Detective Martinez had received Harold's complete investigation along with my recorded evidence of Brad's plans to steal my money. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Mom, Brad found your box. He wants to talk. Please come home. I texted back. Tell Brad I'm sure he does want to talk. The police want to talk to him too. The silence that followed was beautiful. But this was just the beginning. Brad Morrison had made one crucial mistake when he handed me that mop in front of his investors. He'd revealed exactly what kind of man he really was, and I was about to show him exactly what kind of woman he'd been living with. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, Detective Martinez and I were sitting in her office while she reviewed Harold's files. My phone had been buzzing nonstop. 13 missed calls from Jennifer, 7 from Brad, and 3 from numbers I didn't recognize. Mrs. Collins, Detective Martinez said, looking up from the documents. Your husband was quite thorough. This evidence suggests your son-in-law has been operating fraudulent investment schemes for at least 3 years. The question is, how much of your money has he already stolen? I opened my purse and pulled out a folder I'd been carrying since my escape. Every penny, Detective. But here's the thing. I've been tracking it all. See, Harold had taught me to read financial statements long before he died. When Brad convinced Jennifer that I should consolidate my accounts for simplicity, I'd agreed. But I'd also been documenting every transaction, every mysterious transfer, every unexplained fee, every investment that performed impossibly well on paper, but somehow never generated actual returns. He's been using my money to pay other investors, I explained. Classic Ponzi scheme structure. And Jennifer's been helping by convincing me to invest more whenever his house of cards needed propping up. Detective Martinez leaned forward. You're saying your daughter is involved? My daughter thinks she married a successful investor. She has no idea she married a criminal. But she's been his unwitting accomplice, pressuring me to trust Brad with larger amounts whenever he needed fresh capital. That's when my phone rang. Jennifer's name on the screen. Detective Martinez nodded. Answer it. We need to hear what they're saying now. Mom, where are you? Jennifer's voice was strained, panicked. I'm having a conversation with some very nice people about Brad's business practices. Silence. Then what do you mean? I mean, Harold left me some interesting reading material about your husband's investment strategies. Fascinating stuff. Did you know Brad's been paying his early investors with money from newer investors? There's a name for that, Jennifer. Mom, you're confused. Brad explained everything. Those are legitimate investment returns. I looked at Detective Martinez, who was taking notes. Jennifer, sweetheart, when did you last see an actual dividend check? When did you last receive a real statement from a real brokerage firm? Another pause. Brad handles all that. He reinvests everything to maximize growth. Of course he does. Tell me, how much of my money has he invested for me this year? I don't know the exact amount. I do. $230,000. And you know what? My account balance shows 0. Because there never were any investments, Jennifer. Just promises and fake statements and your mother's money disappearing into Brad's bank account. I could hear muffled voices in the background. Brad was there, probably telling Jennifer what to say. Mom, Brad says you're upset about last night and you're trying to cause trouble. He says, you've been confused lately. Maybe having memory issues. Detective Martinez raised an eyebrow. That was a new angle. Questioning my mental competency. Standard playbook for financial elder abuse. My memory is fine, Jennifer. I remember every transaction, every lie, every time Brad convinced you to convince me to hand over more money. I also remember every word he said about me when he thought I couldn't hear. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the voice recordings I've been making for 18 months. Would you like to hear the one where Brad calls me the golden goose with arthritis? Or perhaps the one where he discusses how much longer he needs to play nice before he can access my entire estate. The line went quiet except for the sound of Jennifer breathing heavily. Jennifer, listen to me carefully. I'm sitting in a police station with a detective who specializes in financial crimes. Brad is in serious trouble. And if you don't distance yourself from his business immediately, you could be charged as an accessory. Mom, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. Your husband isn't who you think he is. I hung up and looked at Detective Martinez. How long before you arrest him? We'll need to verify some of the documentation. Interview other potential victims. Give us 48 hours to build an airtight case. 48 hours. Long enough for Brad to realize his world was collapsing. Long enough for him to make some very desperate decisions. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You're making a mistake, Maggie. Some things can't be undone. I showed the message to Detective Martinez, who immediately called for a text specialist to trace the number. Mrs. Collins, I think you should consider staying somewhere safe until we have Brad in custody. I smiled, thinking of the arsenal of evidence Harold had left me. Detective, I've been living in the enemy's house for 2 years. I think I can handle 48 more hours. But as I walked back to my car, I noticed a black sedan parked across the street. Same car I'd seen outside the motel that morning. Brad Morrison was many things. A liar, a thief, a manipulator. But he wasn't stupid. And cornered animals, even the white-collar variety, could be dangerous. I had 48 hours to finish what Harold had started. The question was whether Brad would give me that long. The black sedan followed me back to the motel, keeping a careful distance, but making no effort to hide. I parked and walked calmly to my room, but my heart was racing. Brad was escalating faster than I'd anticipated. Inside my room, I deadbolt the door and called the one person I trusted with the full truth. Harold's brother, Robert, a retired FBI agent who lived 3 hours away in Richmond. Uncle Robert, it's Maggie. I need help. What's wrong? I explained everything. The Ponzi scheme, the evidence, Detective Martinez, and the surveillance that had just begun. Robert listened without interruption, the way law enforcement types do when they're processing threats. Maggie, you're in immediate danger. A Ponzi scheme of that size means Brad's stolen millions. Not just your money. People who lose that kind of money don't just call lawyers. They call other kinds of professionals. I mean, pack your bag right now and drive to Richmond. Don't go home. Don't go anywhere predictable. Move fast and move smart. I was throwing clothes into my suitcase when my phone rang. Jennifer again. Mom, please. Brad wants to fix this. He says there's been a misunderstanding about the investments. Jennifer, where are you right now? We're at home. Brad's making some calls to clear everything up. Listen to me very carefully. Pack a bag and leave that house immediately. Come to Uncle Robert's place in Richmond. Why would I leave my own house? Mom, you're acting paranoid. Because the FBI is going to raid your house in the next 24 hours, and I don't want you there when it happens. Silence. Then the FBI. Your husband has stolen millions of dollars from dozens of people. Jennifer, this isn't just about me anymore. I could hear Brad in the background, his voice sharp and angry. Jennifer came back on the line, but her tone had changed. Mom, Brad says you've been planning this for months. He says you've been setting him up because you never liked him, so now I was the villain. Classic deflection. Jennifer, ask Brad to explain where your mortgage payments have been coming from for the past 2 years. What? Ask him to show you the actual investment accounts where my money is supposedly growing. Ask him for real statements from real brokerage firms. He handles all that because there are no accounts, Jennifer. There never were. Brad's been stealing from me to pay your bills and maintain his lifestyle, and using my credibility to attract other investors he could steal from. Another pause. Then Jennifer's voice came back smaller, less certain. He says, you're confused about how investment accounts work. I closed my eyes. My daughter was still choosing to believe him over me. Jennifer, I'm going to ask you one question, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. In the 3 years you've been married to Brad, have you ever seen him go to an actual office? Have you ever met his colleagues? Have you ever seen concrete proof that his investment firm actually exists? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Jennifer. Mom. Her voice cracked. I need to think. Think fast, sweetheart, because the walls are closing in. I hung up and finished packing. As I loaded my car, I noticed the black sedan was gone. Either they'd gotten bored or they were repositioning for something worse. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Martinez. Change of plans. Federal investigation launching tomorrow morning. Can you come in tonight to give formal statement? I texted back on my way to somewhere safe. We'll call you from there. As I drove toward Richmond, my mind raced through the implications. A federal investigation meant this was bigger than just Brad's local scheme. How many people had he stolen from? How much money was involved? My phone rang as I hit the highway. Unknown number. Mrs. Collins, this is Agent Sarah Chun with the FBI Financial Crimes Task Force. Detective Martinez asked me to contact you. We understand you have extensive documentation of investment fraud involving Bradley Morrison. I do, ma'am. We need to meet tonight. Mr. Morrison's activities are part of a larger investigation involving organized financial crime. Your evidence could be crucial to stopping a network that's stolen from hundreds of victims. Hundreds of victims. My personal revenge against Brad had just become something much larger. Agent Chan, I'm driving to Richmond to stay with family. Can you meet me there? We'll meet you anywhere you feel safe, Mrs. Collins, but time is critical. We have reason to believe Morrison might attempt to flee the country. I thought about Jennifer, still in that house with a desperate man who was about to lose everything. My daughter, who still believed in him, who still thought this was all a misunderstanding. Agent Chan, what about my daughter? She's still with him. We're monitoring the situation. Our priority right now is securing your testimony and the evidence you've collected. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Jennifer's name. Agent Chan, my daughter's calling. Don't answer. If Morrison is planning to run, he might try to use your daughter as leverage to force you to recant your testimony. The call went to voicemail, then another call, then a text. I looked at the text and my blood ran cold. Mom, something's wrong. Brad's packing suitcases and making weird phone calls. I think you were right. Please help me. I pulled over and called Agent Chen back immediately. My daughter needs help now. We're already on our way to the house. Mrs. Collins, stay where you are and let us handle this. But as I sat in my car on the side of the highway, watching police cars race past with their sirens wailing, I realized something. This had stopped being about my humiliation with a mop. This was about saving my daughter from a man who had nothing left to lose. Agent Chan called me back 20 minutes later with news that made my hands shake. Mrs. Collins, when we arrived at the house, your daughter and son-in-law were gone. We found evidence of hasty packing and a laptop with its hard drive removed. Where could they have gone? We're tracking Morrison's credit cards and phone, but he's smart enough to know those can be traced. Ma'am, there's something else you need to know about your son-in-law. I pulled back onto the highway, driving toward Richmond with my phone on speaker. What kind of something? Bradley Morrison isn't his real name. His birth name is Bradley Marcus Hoffman. He's been using false identities for financial fraud for over a decade. Your daughter married a ghost. The road blurred in front of me. A ghost? Mrs. Collins, we've been tracking Hoffman for 3 years. He's operated Ponzi schemes in 4 different states under 6 different identities. He specializes in targeting families with elderly relatives who have substantial assets. My heart stopped. You're saying he targeted Jennifer to get to me? We believe so. His pattern is consistent. He identifies a potential target, researches their family structure, then arranges to meet and court a family member who can provide access to the target's finances. I thought about how Jennifer had met Brad at that charity gala. How charming he'd been, how quickly their relationship had progressed, how eager he'd been to have me move in with them after Harold died. Agent Chan, are you telling me my daughter was never anything more than a tool to him? I'm sorry, ma'am, but based on his previous operations, yes, he likely researched your family extensively before approaching Jennifer. He would have known about your husband's death, your financial situation, your close relationship with your daughter. I pulled over again, unable to drive while processing this information. Jennifer doesn't know, does she? She has no idea she was targeted. Given his MMO, she's probably genuinely in love with him and believes their relationship is real. That's what makes his victims so effective. They're innocent accomplices who provide credibility and access. My phone buzzed with another text from Jennifer. Mom, Brad says we're going on a surprise vacation. Won't tell me where. Something feels wrong. I'm scared. I read the message to Agent Chen. Mrs. Collins, that message suggests your daughter might be figuring out the truth. If Morrison realizes she's becoming suspicious, she could be in real danger. What kind of danger? His previous operations ended in one of 2 ways. Either he disappeared alone when the scheme collapsed or what? Or the family members who could testify against him suffered convenient accidents. The highway seemed to tilt around me. Are you saying he might hurt Jennifer? I'm saying a man who's stolen millions of dollars and facing federal charges has limited options. If he can't disappear quietly, he might try to eliminate witnesses. My daughter, my beautiful, trusting daughter, was in a car with a professional criminal who might kill her to protect himself. Agent Chan, how do we find them? We're working every angle. Credit cards, phone pings, facial recognition at airports and bus stations. But Mrs. Collins, there's something you can do that might help. Anything. You know Morrison better than anyone else who's investigating him. You've lived with him for 2 years, observed his habits, his preferences, his reactions under stress. Where would he go? What would he do when cornered? I closed my eyes and thought about Brad Morrison or Bradley Hoffman or whoever he really was in 2 years of living with him. What had I learned about the man behind the mask? He was methodical. Everything he did was planned. He never acted impulsively. He was paranoid about money. He kept cash hidden in various places around the house. I'd seen him take bills from a coffee can in the garage, from behind books in his study. He was obsessed with having escape routes. He'd mentioned several times that he kept a storage unit for business documents and a safety deposit box at a bank across town. Most importantly, he was arrogant. He believed he was smarter than everyone else, that he could outthink any situation. Agent Chun, Brad's not panicking. He's executing a plan he's probably had ready for months. What kind of plan? He's got resources stashed away that we don't know about. Cash, maybe fake IDs, transportation, and he's not running randomly. He's going somewhere specific, somewhere he feels he has an advantage. Do you have any idea where? I thought about conversations I'd overheard, places Brad had mentioned, trips he'd taken alone for business. He's mentioned a cabin in West Virginia several times. Said it belonged to a business associate, always talked about it like it was his backup plan for when he needed to think. Mrs. Collins, that's exactly the kind of detail we need. Can you remember anything else about this cabin? He said it was near a lake, completely off the grid. No neighbors, no cell service. He called it his thinking place. We'll start running searches for property records in West Virginia, connected to any of his known aliases. But even as I gave Agent Chen the information, a terrible thought was growing in my mind. If Brad had been planning an escape route for months, what role had he planned for Jennifer? The woman who could identify him, who knew his real personality, who could testify about his financial manipulations. In Brad's world, Jennifer wasn't his wife. She was a liability, and I was running out of time to save her. I made it to Uncle Robert's house in Richmond by midnight. He met me at the door with coffee and the grim expression of a man who'd spent 30 years dealing with criminals. Maggie, I've been making calls. This Bradley Hoffman is worse than you thought. How much worse? Robert led me to his kitchen table where he'd spread out printouts and photographs. He suspected in the disappearance of 2 previous wives from his earlier schemes. Women who got too close to the truth and then conveniently vanished. My coffee cup slipped from my hands, shattering on the floor. Disappeared. How? Car accidents that couldn't be fully investigated. House fires with only one victim, always perfectly timed to occur, just as his financial schemes were being exposed. I stared at the photos of 2 women who looked remarkably similar to Jennifer. Young, attractive, trusting. Both smiling in pictures that were probably taken during their happiest moments with the man they thought they'd married. Robert, how long do we have? Based on his pattern, not long. He's probably already decided whether Jennifer lives or dies. The question is whether he's gotten her to wherever he plans to make it happen. My phone rang. Agent Chun, Mrs. Collins, we found the cabin. It's registered to a Marcus Bradley Holdings LLC in Mineral County, West Virginia. We're mobilizing a tactical team, but it's a 4-hour drive through mountainous terrain. What about Jennifer? We picked up her phone signal heading in that direction 3 hours ago. Then it went dark. Could be the terrain. Or Morrison could have destroyed the phone. I'm coming with you, ma'am. That's not possible. This is a federal operation. Robert took the phone from me. Agent Chun, this is Robert Collins, retired FBI. I'm the victim's uncle, and I'm driving her to West Virginia, whether you want us there or not. She knows Morrison's psychology better than anyone on your team. A pause. Then, Mr. Collins, you can observe from a safe distance, but under no circumstances are you to interfere with the operation. We left Richmond at 2 a.m. following Agent Chen's team into the mountains of West Virginia. During the drive, I called Detective Martinez to update her on the federal investigation. Mrs. Collins, there's something you should know. After Morrison disappeared, we executed a search warrant on his house. What we found in his office suggests this was bigger than just a Ponzi scheme. What did you find? Documentation for at least 12 different identities, detailed psychological profiles of potential victims, and what appears to be a how-to manual for targeting elderly victims through their families. A manual, step-by-step instructions for researching targets, approaching family members, building trust, gaining financial access, and what he calls endgame scenarios for when the operation needs to be terminated. What kind of endgame scenarios, Mrs. Collins? Your son-in-law is a professional predator. This isn't just about money. It's about the systematic exploitation and elimination of elderly victims and their families. Robert was listening to the conversation while driving. He caught my eye in the rearview mirror. Maggie, this changes everything. We're not just trying to save Jennifer from a desperate criminal. We're trying to stop a serial killer. As we drove deeper into the mountains, I thought about the past 2 years living with Brad. All those moments when I'd felt uncomfortable but couldn't put my finger on why. The way he watched me sometimes, like he was studying my reactions, the questions he'd ask about my health, my medications, my daily routines. He hadn't just been planning to steal my money. He'd been planning my death. The only thing that had saved me was my own paranoia. The voice recordings, the documentation, the evidence I'd been gathering without even fully understanding why. At 5:00 a.m., we reached the staging area where Agent Chen's team was preparing for the approach to the cabin. Through binoculars, I could see smoke rising from the chimney of a small structure about half a mile away. Mrs. Collins, Agent Chen said, handing me a radio. If Morrison follows his pattern, he'll try to make whatever happens to your daughter look like an accident. We need to move fast. What kind of accident? Based on the cabin's location and his previous MOS, probably a tragic fire. Remote location, no witnesses, perfect cover story for a grieving widower who lost everything in the flames. I grabbed Agent Chen's arm. How long before you can get to the cabin? 20 minutes to get in position. Maybe another 10 to secure the perimeter. That might be too long. Through the binoculars, I could see movement in the cabin windows. 2 figures, one noticeably smaller than the other. Jennifer was still alive, but for how much longer? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Maggie, this is Jennifer using Brad's phone. He's acting crazy, talking about fire cleansing everything. Please help me. I showed the message to Agent Chen, whose face went pale. He's accelerating the timeline. We need to move now. But as the tactical team prepared to advance on the cabin, I realized something that made my blood freeze. Brad wasn't just planning to kill Jennifer and disappear. He was planning to kill her in a way that would also destroy all the evidence of his crimes and frame me for her murder. Agent Chen, I said, grabbing her radio. You need to know something about Brad's plan. He's not just trying to eliminate Jennifer as a witness. What do you mean? Think about it. He disappears. Jennifer dies in a tragic fire. And who's the only person who benefits? The bitter mother-in-law who's been accusing him of financial fraud. The unstable widow who's been causing trouble for months. Agent Chen's eyes widened as she understood. He's setting you up to take the fall for her murder. The voice recordings I made could be twisted to sound like I was planning revenge. The financial evidence could be dismissed as the paranoid delusions of a grieving woman. If Jennifer dies and Brad disappears, I become the prime suspect. That's why he didn't kill you himself, Robert said grimly. He needed you alive to be the scapegoat. Through the binoculars, I watched smoke continuing to rise from the cabin chimney. But something was wrong with the smoke. It was too thick, too dark. Agent Chen, that's not chimney smoke. Something's burning inside that cabin. She grabbed her radio. All units, expedite approach. Structure fire in progress. But even as the tactical team raced toward the cabin, I knew they might be too late. Brad had probably been planning this moment for weeks, maybe months. He'd have everything timed perfectly. My phone rang. An unknown number. Answer it, Agent Chen said. Keep him talking. Hello, Brad. Maggie. His voice was calm, almost cheerful. I wondered when you'd figure out where we were. Let Jennifer go. Your quarrel is with me. Oh, Maggie. You still don't understand, do you? Jennifer was never the target. You were. She was just the key to your life insurance policies, your bank accounts, your trust and family. I could hear Jennifer's voice in the background, crying, pleading. Brad, I'll give you whatever you want. Money, testimony, recanting my accusations, anything. Just let her walk away. You know what I want, Maggie? I want you to suffer the way my other targets suffered. I want you to lose everything that matters to you before you die. Other targets. Did you really think you were special? You're number 7, Maggie. 7 families I've destroyed. 7 trusting women I've eliminated. 7 perfect crimes that no one ever solved. Agent Chen was frantically signaling her team. They were still 5 minutes from the cabin. Tell me about the others, Brad. Why? So you can feel special in your final moments? Ella Laner in Michigan thought she was smart too. Kept detailed financial records, suspected what I was doing. Her house fire was particularly tragic. Happened right after her daughter's mysterious car accident. My heart stopped. You killed the daughters too. Only when they became problems. Jennifer's been asking too many questions lately. Wants to see bank statements. Talk to other investors. She's becoming inconvenient. Brad, listen to me. The FBI knows everything. They know about all your identities, all your previous schemes. Running won't work this time. His laugh was cold. Running? Maggie? I'm not running. I'm disappearing. There's a difference. Bradley Morrison dies in this fire along with his wife. His death certificate will be filed in 3 different states. The man who walks away from this cabin doesn't exist yet. Through the radio, I could hear Agent Chen's team reporting their position. Still 3 minutes out. What about all the money you stole? What was the point if you're just going to disappear? Oh, the money's quite safe. Transferred to accounts under identities that won't exist until tomorrow. I'll be someone new by midnight. Maggie, someone with a very comfortable nest egg and a clean slate. And Jennifer? Jennifer serves her final purpose. A grieving widow who dies tragically in the same fire that claims her husband. 2 victims of their mother-in-law's revenge plot. The smoke from the cabin was getting thicker. Through the binoculars, I could see flames starting to show through the windows. Agent Chen, how long now? 2 minutes. But I could hear Jennifer screaming in the background of the phone call. 2 minutes might be too long. Brad, I said, making a decision that would either save my daughter or kill us both. There's something you should know about those financial records you're trying to destroy. What? They're not the only copies. Harold wasn't just investigating you. He was working with federal agents before he died. Everything you've done, every crime you've committed, it's all documented and safely stored with the FBI. Silence on the line. Then you're lying. Am I? How do you think they found you so fast? How do you think they knew about your other identities? That's impossible. Harold was just an accountant. Harold was an accountant who noticed irregularities in financial reports and did what any responsible citizen would do. He contacted the authorities. You killed the wrong person, Brad. The evidence was never in my house. Another pause. When Brad spoke again, his voice had lost its confidence. Even if that's true, it doesn't matter. You'll still lose Jennifer, and I'll still disappear. No, Brad, you won't. Through the binoculars, I watched as Agent Chen's tactical team surrounded the burning cabin. Because the man walking away from that cabin isn't going to be you. That's when I heard the gunshot. The gunshot echoed through the mountains, followed by absolute silence on the phone line. My heart stopped as I watched smoke pour from the cabin windows. Agent Chen, what's happening? Her voice crackled through the radio communications with her team. Alpha Team, report. Was that gunfire? Affirmative. Single shot from inside the structure. No movement visible through windows. I grabbed the binoculars, scanning the cabin desperately for any sign of life. The flames were spreading faster now, consuming the structure with a hunger that suggested accelerant had been used. They need to get in there now, I told Agent Chen. The structure's too compromised. If they go in and the roof collapses, if they don't go in, Jennifer burns to death. That's when Robert pointed to something I hadn't noticed. A basement window on the side of the cabin, barely visible through the undergrowth. Maggie, look at the foundation. That cabin has a basement. If Brad was planning this, he might have set it up as an escape route. Agent Chen was already relaying information to her team. Possible basement access on the east side. Approach with caution. Through the radio chatter, I heard one of the agents reporting visual on the basement window. It's been broken from the inside. Recent damage. My phone rang again. Unknown number. Answer it. Agent Chen said. Maggie. Jennifer's voice, weak but alive. Jennifer, where are you? I'm in some kind of basement under the cabin. Brad. Brad tried to, her voice broke into sobs. Jennifer, listen to me. The FBI is outside. You need to tell me exactly where you are. There's a tunnel, Mom. Brad showed me a tunnel that leads from the basement to somewhere outside. He said it was his emergency exit. Where does the tunnel come out? I don't know. It's dark and I'm scared to go farther. Brad went ahead of me, but then I heard the gunshot and he didn't come back. Agent Chun was coordinating her team's movement toward the basement area. Through the binoculars, I could see agents positioning themselves around the cabin's perimeter. Jennifer, you need to move through that tunnel. The cabin's on fire and it's going to collapse. Mom, what if Brad's in the tunnel? What if he's waiting for me? I looked at Robert, who had 30 years of FBI experience reading situations like this. Tell her to go, he said grimly. If Morrison's dead, the tunnel is her only way out. If he's alive and waiting in the tunnel, she's trapped either way. Jennifer, you have to move. Follow the tunnel and get as far from the cabin as you can. For the next 10 minutes, I listened to my daughter's terrified breathing as she crawled through what sounded like a narrow underground passage. Agent Chun had teams moving to try to locate where the tunnel might exit, but the mountainous terrain made it difficult to predict. Mom, I see light ahead. I think I'm almost out. Jennifer, when you exit the tunnel, you need to identify yourself immediately. There are FBI agents everywhere, and they might mistake you for Brad. Okay, Mom. I'm at the end. I can see trees and see. Oh God. What? Jennifer, what do you see? There's blood, Mom. A lot of blood. And Brad's gun is on the ground, but he's not here. Agent Chun grabbed my radio. Jennifer, this is Agent Chun with the FBI. Don't touch anything. Stay exactly where you are and keep talking so we can locate you. I'm in a clearing about 50 yards from the cabin. There's a creek and some kind of old hunting blind. Jennifer, I said, look around carefully. Do you see any movement? Any sign of where Brad might have gone? Mom, there's a trail of blood leading toward the creek. It looks like someone was dragging themselves or dragging something. Agent Chun was directing her teams toward the creek area when my phone rang again. This time I recognized the number. It was Brad's real phone. He's still alive, I whispered. Answer it, Agent Chun said. Keep him talking while we triangulate his position. Hello, Brad. You clever. His voice was strained, pained. You actually convinced her to turn against me. Jennifer figured out the truth herself. She's not stupid, Brad. No, she's not. That's why she's going to die in that tunnel collapse I just triggered. My blood turned to ice. What tunnel collapse? Did you really think I only had one escape plan? The tunnel's rigged with explosives, Maggie. Your daughter has about 2 minutes before the whole underground system comes down. Through the radio, I could hear Agent Chun frantically directing her teams. All units, possible explosive devices in underground tunnel system. Evacuate Jennifer Collins immediately. Jennifer, I screamed into my phone. Get away from the tunnel entrance. Run toward the agents. But the line was dead. In the distance I could see Jennifer standing in the clearing, confused by the conflicting instructions she was hearing. That's when the ground shook. The explosion was muffled but powerful, sending a plume of dirt and debris shooting up from multiple points around the cabin. The burning structure above collapsed completely, and I watched in horror as the clearing where Jennifer stood started to crack and sink. Jennifer! I screamed, dropping the radio and running toward the cabin. Despite Agent Chen's shouts for me to stay back, I could see my daughter trying to run, but the ground beneath her feet was unstable, breaking apart as the underground tunnel system collapsed. Behind her, something moved in the trees. A figure stumbling through the underbrush, dragging one leg. Brad still alive, still hunting. And my daughter was trapped between a collapsing landscape and a wounded predator who had nothing left to lose. I ran faster than I had in 20 years, driven by a mother's desperate need to reach her child before a monster destroyed everything I loved. But I wasn't going to make it in time. I watched my daughter stumble and fall as the ground beneath her gave way. The clearing was collapsing into the destroyed tunnel system, creating a sinkhole that threatened to swallow everything. Behind her, Brad emerged from the trees, his shirt soaked with blood from what looked like a shoulder wound. He was carrying something in his good hand. Not a gun, but what appeared to be a detonator. One more surprise, Maggie, he called out, his voice carrying across the chaos. The cabin wasn't the only thing I rigged to blow. Agent Chen's voice crackled through the radio I dropped. Mrs. Collins, get back. We've identified multiple explosive devices throughout the area. But I kept running. Jennifer was trying to climb out of the collapsing clearing, dirt and debris sliding down around her. She was 20 feet from safety, but might as well have been 20 m. That's when I understood Brad's real plan. He hadn't just rigged the tunnel to collapse. He'd turned the entire area into a kill zone with explosives planted throughout the surrounding forest. Anyone who tried to rescue Jennifer would trigger additional detonations. The perfect murder-suicide that would eliminate all witnesses while making it look like the unstable mother-in-law had orchestrated the whole thing. "Brad!" I shouted, stopping just outside what I hoped was the blast radius. "You want me? Here I am. Let Jennifer go and finish what you started." He laughed, the sound echoing off the mountains. "Oh, Maggie, you still think this is about revenge? This was never personal. It was just business." "What business?" "The business of disappearing. You see, Bradley Morrison was always meant to die here. The question was whether he'd die alone or take his family with him." Jennifer had managed to grab onto a tree root and was pulling herself up from the sinkhole. But Brad was moving toward her, limping but determined. "The explosion that's coming will be big enough to destroy all the evidence," he continued. "Bodies will be unidentifiable. The official story will be that a disturbed widow killed her daughter and son-in-law before taking her own life. Except you won't be dead. Bradley Morrison will be dead. The man who walks away from here doesn't exist yet." Agent Chen's team was positioned around the perimeter, but I could tell they were afraid to move closer. Any sudden movement might trigger more explosives. That's when I remembered something Harold had taught me about men like Brad. Their arrogance was always their weakness. "Brad, there's something you should know about your perfect plan." "What's that?" "What's Maggie? It's not perfect. In fact, it's full of holes." I pulled out my phone and held it up so he could see it. "I've been recording this entire conversation. Every threat, every confession, every detail of your plan to murder federal agents and frame me for your crimes." His face changed, confidence wavering for the first time. "You see, Harold taught me to always have backup plans. The evidence I gave the FBI was just the beginning. The real insurance policy is the live stream I've been broadcasting to a private server for the past hour." That was a lie. But Brad didn't know that. "Even if you kill everyone here, even if you destroy all the physical evidence, there are recordings of everything you've said and done. Recordings that will make it impossible for you to disappear." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Agent Chan, would you mind confirming for Brad that his confession has been recorded?" Agent Chen's voice came through clearly on the radio. "Mr. Morrison, or should I say Mr. Hoffman, everything you've said has been documented. Even if you complete your plan here, you'll never be safe. We'll hunt every identity you've ever used." I watched Brad's face as the reality sank in. His perfect disappearing act had been compromised from the moment he'd started talking. "You know what your real mistake was, Brad?" Called out. "You assumed I was just a helpless old woman. You never considered that Harold had prepared me for exactly this kind of situation." "Prepared you how?" "By teaching me that sometimes the best defense is making sure your enemy destroys himself." I held up a second device, Harold's old tape recorder, the one he'd used for dictating financial reports. I'd been carrying it since leaving the motel, recording everything as backup to the backup. 40 years of marriage to an accountant teaches you to document everything. Brad, every conversation, every threat, every admission of guilt. Brad raised the detonator, his face twisted with rage. "It doesn't matter. I'll kill all of you and deal with the recordings later." That's when Agent Chen's sharpshooter, positioned in the trees behind Brad, took his shot. The detonator flew from Brad's hand as the bullet struck his wrist. He screamed and fell to his knees, blood flowing from the fresh wound. Jennifer used the distraction to pull herself completely out of the sinkhole and run toward the FBI agents. As Brad knelt in the dirt, clutching his wounded wrist, I walked over and picked up the detonator. It was heavier than I'd expected with multiple switches and lights. "Maggie!" Brad gasped, looking up at me with something that might have been respect. "You actually beat me." "No, Brad, I didn't beat you." I looked down at the man who'd stolen my money, humiliated me in front of strangers, and tried to murder my daughter. "I just refused to be your victim." Agent Chun and her team moved in to secure Brad and defuse the remaining explosives. As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked back at me one final time. "This isn't over, Maggie." I smiled, thinking of the mountain of evidence that would put him away forever, the recordings that would destroy any hope of escape, and the daughter who was safe in my arms. "Yes, Brad, it is." 3 months later, I sat in a federal courthouse watching Bradley Marcus Hoffman, his real name we'd learned, receive 7 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. The evidence Harold and I had collected, combined with the FBI's investigation, had uncovered the full scope of his crimes. 11 murders disguised as accidents, 47 victims of financial fraud, and a network of accomplices across 6 states. Jennifer sat beside me, still processing the truth about the man she'd married. The past 3 months had been difficult for her, learning that her entire relationship had been a lie, that she'd been chosen as a target rather than loved as a person, that her mother had been trying to protect her from a monster. "Mom," she said as we watched Brad being led away in shackles, "I owe you an apology I'll never be able to fully give. You don't owe me anything, sweetheart. You were a victim too. I chose him over you. I believed his lies instead of trusting my own mother." I took her hand, thinking about everything we'd both lost and found in the past few months. "Jennifer, if I learned anything from this experience, it's that family isn't about being right or wrong. It's about being willing to fight for each other, even when things look hopeless." After the sentencing, Agent Chun approached us with news about the restitution process. The FBI had recovered most of the stolen money from accounts Brad had hidden around the world. I would get back nearly everything he'd taken, plus damages from his seized assets. But the real victory wasn't financial. "Mrs. Collins," Agent Chun said, "I wanted you to know that your evidence has been crucial in closing cold cases across multiple states. You've helped bring justice to families who thought they'd never get answers about their loved ones." That evening, Jennifer and I sat in my new apartment, a place I'd chosen because I wanted to, not because I had to. We were planning a trip to Europe, something Harold and I had always talked about but never done. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "When did you first suspect Brad wasn't who he claimed to be?" I thought about it, remembering those early months when something had felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on what. "The mop," I said finally. "The mop? A man who really loved you would never humiliate your mother in front of strangers." The moment he handed me that mop, I knew he saw me as an obstacle, not family. Everything else just confirmed what that moment revealed. Jennifer smiled. The first genuine smile I'd seen from her since the whole ordeal began. "You know what the ironic thing is? He thought he was so smart, manipulating all of us. But he never realized the most dangerous person in that house was the woman he dismissed as a helpless old lady." I laughed, thinking about Harold's voice recordings hidden in the safety deposit box. The financial documentation that had taken down a criminal network. The simple act of documenting everything that had saved not just my life but dozens of others. "Your father always said I was too trusting," I told Jennifer. "But he also taught me to trust and verify." Brad counted on the trusting part. He never considered the verify part. My phone buzzed with a text from Uncle Robert. "Saw the news coverage. Harold would be proud." Harold. I still missed him every day. But now I understood his final gift to me. Not just the evidence that had exposed Brad, but the knowledge that I was stronger than I'd ever believed. "Mom, what are you going to do now?" Jennifer asked. I looked around my apartment. My space chosen by me, paid for with my money, decorated according to my taste. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I was living life on my own terms. "I'm going to be the woman I should have been all along," I said. "Independent, cautious when necessary, but never again willing to be anyone's victim, even if it means being alone." I smiled, thinking of the support group I joined for families of financial crime victims, the volunteer work I'd started doing with Agent Chen's department, the friends I was making who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide. "Jennifer, I learned something important from this whole experience. Being alone and being lonely are two different things. I was lonelier living in your house, being taken for granted every day than I am now, living independently, and choosing my own relationships." 6 months later, I received a letter from Brad in federal prison. Jennifer had gotten one too, but she'd thrown it away unopened. I decided to read mine. "Maggie," it began. "I wanted you to know that I respected you more than any of my other victims. You were the only one who figured out my game and turned it against me. In another life, we might have been allies instead of enemies." I folded the letter and put it in the shredder. Some people, I'd learned, never change. They just find new ways to manipulate from wherever they end up. But I had changed. The woman who'd meekly accepted that mop 3 months ago no longer existed. In her place was someone who understood that respect isn't given. It's demanded. That family means people who build you up, not tear you down. And that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to be what other people need you to be. My phone rang. Jennifer's name on the screen. Hi, sweetheart. Mom, I was thinking about our trip to Paris. What if we extended it to include London and Rome? I know Dad always wanted to see the Colosseum. I smiled, looking at the photo of Harold on my mantle. He was smiling too, the way he always did when he was proud of something I'd accomplished. I think that's a wonderful idea, Jennifer. Your father would love that we're finally taking that adventure. Mom, yes. Thank you for not giving up on me even when I didn't deserve it. That's what mothers do, sweetheart. We fight for our children even when they can't fight for themselves. After hanging up, I sat in my favorite chair, the one I'd bought because I liked it, not because it matched anything else, and thought about the woman I'd become. She was stronger than the woman who'd been handed that mop. She was wiser than the woman who'd trusted a charming son-in-law without question. She was more independent than the woman who defined herself through other people's needs. But most importantly, she was someone who would never again confuse being useful with being valued. Harold had always said that the best revenge is living well. As I sat planning my European adventure, surrounded by friends who valued me and a daughter who finally understood what she'd almost lost, I realized he'd been right. Sometimes the woman holding the mop really is the most dangerous person in the room. She just has to decide to stop cleaning up other people's messes and start making her own choices instead. The box I'd left behind had contained a key to freedom, not just from Brad's schemes, but from a life where I'd forgotten my own worth. Now finally I was free to be exactly who I wanted to be, and it felt magnificent. Music. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters. Music.